through interactive and engaging learning sessions that open our eyes to the applications of Indian wisdom. And today, we have gathered together for a very special and insightful fireside chat on how to bring Chanakya's principles into action between Jayesh Shah, Director, Svatantra Microhousing Finance, and Rajesh Kamath, co-founder, Chiranjeev Gurukul. Welcome. Before we start today's conversation, we would like to begin with our invocation. So I would invite you all to sit straight, close your eyes, sit in a comfortable meditative posture, take a deep breath, and exhale. Om Sahana Sahana Sahavirya Tejasvinapadidastu Avidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Once again, a very warm welcome and namaste to all of you. Thank you for joining us today on this lovely Thursday evening. And it's a pleasure to see you all. So before I get started, I would request you all to please stay on mute. And if you can, do come on camera. It would be lovely to see you all. We are honored to welcome Jayesh Shah, a visionary in inclusive finance and affordable housing. He has spent more than 2 decades at HDFC, playing a key role in shaping India's housing finance sector and leading international projects in Sri Lanka and Indonesia. He later founded Svatantra Microhousing Finance, which has provided ethical, long-term housing finance to over 50,000 low-income families across India. A lifelong learner, Jayesh brings together ancient wisdom and modern leadership as a student of Yoga Shastra and Artha Shastra, currently pursuing his advanced studies at CG's Madhyamik program. His journey is one of innovation, purpose, and lasting impact. And in conversation with him, we have Rajesh Kamath, a consultant, coach, columnist, teacher, and a lifelong learner. Rajesh's purpose is to bring forth the timeless wisdom of Bharatiya Shastras into today's workplaces, helping individuals as well as organizations thrive by blending the best of Indian and Western management principles. He is also the principal facilitator of all Chiranjeev Gurukul programs, in addition to his capacity as co founder. A warm welcome to you both and our lovely audience today to what I'm assured will be an incredibly insightful interaction. Over to you, Rajesh ji.
Namaste Sabiko. And as we say, Shubh Guruvar and Suswagatam Sabika. So we are going to start today in a very unique way. All right, generally we get into the conversation headlong with a little bit of, background. But what we are going to do today is share with you a little clip which will give you an idea of what's to come today. And it will also set the tone for today's discussion, which I'm eagerly waiting for, even though I have spent a fair amount of time with Jayesh in the past. So let's go with the clip right now and requesting everyone to be on mute.
कुंभार करूँ मैं 22 साल से टैक्सी चला रहा हूँ मुंबई में। घर लेना तो बहुत सालों से चाहता था मैं, लेकिन कोई घर नहीं देता था, सब कैश मांगते थे। और दूसरी बात, बैंक के पास गया तो बैंक वाले बोलते थे आपके पास आईटी रिटर्न है, आपका प्रोफेशन भी इतना स्टेबल नहीं है, ये सब बोल के हमको वापस भेज देते थे। इनकम तो इतनी नहीं है कि हम भर सके, इनकम टैक्स तो कभी भरते ही नहीं, हमारी इतनी इनकम भी नहीं है हमारी भरने की। जैसे मुंबई में घर लेना करीब करीब इम्पॉसिबल है टैक्सी ड्राइवर के लिए।
माइक्रो हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कॉरपोरेशन एक ऐसी कंपनी है जो लोगों का इंटेंशन और उनकी एबिलिटी देख के लोन देती है। मिडिल क्लास लोगों का भी एक ऐसा सपना होता है कि उनका खुद का घर हो, एक अच्छा मतलब फ्लैट टाइप में, क्योंकि वो लोग चौल में रहते हैं, उनको भी एक सपना होता है कि बिल्डिंग में रहना है, कोई अच्छा टाउनशिप में जाना है, लेकिन मतलब उनको लोन की वजह से वो लोग वहाँ तक नहीं पहुँच सकते।
घर वालों को ये मालूम नहीं था कि टैक्सी वालों को कोई लोन दे सकता है। हमारे टैक्सी यूनियन के ऑफिस में एडवर्टाइजमेंट लगी थी, उसके थ्रू मैंने अप्रोच किया। मैंने एक ट्राई बोल के माइक्रो हाउसिंग फाइनेंस से पूछताछ की, तो लेकिन ने शुरू से हमको मुझे हेल्प करना चालू किया और बहुत स्पीडी हेल्प की उन्होंने। मैं जैसा टाइम दूंगा वो मेरे टाइम से आते थे। मैं बोलता था उनको कि एक दिन मैं अपना एब्सेंट रहूँगा काम के लिए, लेकिन वो बोलते थे नहीं, काम पे जाओ, तुम काम करते करते हम लोगों से मिलो।
तो हमारे पास कस्टमर की ज़रूरत देखी जाती है, कस्टमर का मतलब इंटेंशन देखा जाता है। कस्टमर अगर पैसा भर सकता है, वो उतना कैपेबल है, तो उसको हम लोग लोन देते हैं। हम लोग डॉक्यूमेंट्स के ऊपर लोन नहीं देते, बट कस्टमर की इंटेंशन के ऊपर लोन देते हैं।
यही पूछा था इनकम कैसा है, कितने डिपेंडेंट है। उनके ऑफिशियल मेरे घर आके इंक्वायरी करके गए, सर्वे करके गए। 6,000 पे तो मुंबई में अभी रेंटल बेसिस पे भी कोई रूम नहीं मिल रही है, और ये तो मेरी खुद की है, हो जाएगी। तो इसलिए मैं बड़ी खुशी से 6,000 पर मंथ भर देता हूँ। तो घर वाले तो जैसे ही मैंने बोल दिया माइक्रो फाइनेंस हाउसिंग फाइनेंस से लोन मिलने वाला है, तब भी विश्वास नहीं हुआ। जब सैंक्शन लेटर आया माइक्रो हाउसिंग फाइनेंस से, तभी उनको पूरा विश्वास हो गया कि अपने को नया घर मिल सकता है। जो मेरा धारावी में पहला घर है वो बहुत ही कंजेस्टेड है। अभी मैं भीवपुर में जाके रहूँगा, वो बढ़िया घर रहेगा, जो मैं सपने में भी नहीं सोचता था कि इतने अच्छे लोकेशन में मुझे घर मिलेगा। नया घर जो है वो 320 स्क्वायर फीट का है, जो हम बड़ी खुशी से रहेंगे, सबको लिए जगह भी अच्छी तरह मिलेगी। जब मैं नए घर में जाऊँगा, गाँव से 2 मेहमान आएंगे, वो भी रह सकते हैं यहाँ। ये करीब करीब 10-12 साल के बाद मेरा सपना पूरा होगा घर खरीदने का।
Yes, how beautiful is that? I've seen this clip a few times earlier, but it's always good to see things like this. हम intention पर लोन देते हैं, है ना, and not on basis of bank statement and everything else. After all, who wants a loan if everything is there in place, right? We need loan at the lower end because there is nobody else who will give it to us, and we still have aspirations to meet. Now, this will remind you, my dear friends from CG, but those who are not part of Chiranjeev Gurukul courses, you may be part of the community or you could be even outside of it. Where there is a purpose, that's where the leader's work begins, says Acharya Chanakya. और इस पर्पस को हम धर्म बोलते हैं, और उस धर्म को निभाने वाला है स्वामी. Now, Swami is a term for a holistic leader. Okay, there's no equivalent term in English, even though oftentimes we struggle in Bharat to find an equal term for Bharatiya terms. So I'm going to repeat the two terms. Dharma means purpose, even though it means many other things, right? And Swami is the leader, more specifically one who has managed to reach a certain level of consciousness where this purpose makes sense, where this purpose becomes the purpose of that Swami's life itself. So I'm going to, at this stage, welcome Jayesh Ji, whom I've had the great pleasure of knowing now for a few years, right? And what do I say? I mean, it's not easy. One of my, as a student and a teacher of Kautilya Artha Shastra, one of my great pleasures always is to identify Swamis and Swaminis in various walks of life. So I was thrilled when, and I'm not saying this now, because we are in this program, I've always maintained this, and you will see more of it. I'm always happy meeting Jayesh ji because I see the Swami in him. So with that, I welcome Jayesh ji. Also, very happy to have him on our CG Madhyamik module also at this moment, as was mentioned earlier. Jayesh ji, great welcome. Namaste. आप यहाँ पर आए and you became part of our.
Thank you, everyone. Namaste, everyone.
Thank you. So, Jayesh ji, could I request you to please rewind a little bit, right? And in that journey, also tell us. So, one is where the purpose began, but I also know, and I sometimes envy you for the kind of mentors you had in life. All right. So, tell us a little bit about the Vriddha, the term that Acharya uses for mentors who also may have inspired you on this journey. Over to you.
Sure. Thank you. But at the outset, before I get into my journey, I would like to put not a disclaimer, but a very profound statement in the sense that it's not about my journey. What we're going to discuss and what we're going to learn today, it's not about my journey. It's a journey about a collective journey about a lot of people who've sort of aligned themselves to this purpose and have contributed in multiple ways. I mean, and I think none of these contributions have been in small by any standards. So what you hear is not about me myself alone, and it's actually a collective team journey that we've been able to walk through. Yes, Rajeshri. I mean, I guess the early genes, I mean, from both my maternal side and the paternal side, had this commitment to seva among the communities and various things. And probably that's where the seed originated. But I was very fortunate when as the beginning of my career, I had the opportunity to join a company like HDFC. And it was just a chance. HDFC wasn't so well known at that time. And HDFC, when I joined, and I had a couple of other offers, and people were really surprised. I said, "Are you sure you want to join this company?" It looked like a government, office, and there was nothing fancy about it. The salary was very little. I started at a 1,800 rupee per month salary there as a management trainee, and but I guess that was probably one of the finest or the best things that happened in my career. The kind of culture, the kind of organization that Mr. H.T. Parekh and Mr. Deepak Parekh had built, and with a lot of his colleagues, I think were the stepping stones in terms of training us and the kind of work ethics that are required, the transparency that is required, keeping the customer at the focus. When customer service and all these concepts were sort of unknown at that time, there were no market competition for HDFC. I mean, they could probably give loans to anybody they wanted to, but they were always still conscious about the customer, the kind of service they provided. I think that initial training and the initial what we learned from the seniors, and we learned them by seeing them. It was not just them talking about it or written policies somewhere. In fact, whatever we learned was seeing our seniors do that and practice what they said. And I guess that's what laid the foundation. And then as my responsibilities in HDFC grew, we tried to follow the same. We were supported by a very good team. And there was a time when I was feeling a little sort of bored doing the same job every day. And that's when this opportunity came up, when a team of some wonderful people were putting this company together, trying to address the housing problem. At that time, I mean, for people who are not from the housing background, to give you a little background, we've been talking about shortage of housing in the country for a long time. I mean, I know for sure since 1987 when I joined HDFC, and we've been talking about 28 million shortage or 30 million shortage. The number or the needle hasn't moved. Probably it's only gone the other way, and the shortage has only increased. And if we analyze the shortage a little further, 95% of this shortage is in housing for economically weaker sections. That is the low income and the economically weaker section of the society. Now, the reason why there is a shortage in this segment is because most of these people in this segment work in informal sectors. They do not have formal documents to prove their incomes, and therefore they are normally, excluded from the mainstream finance companies or mainstream finance systems, banks, housing finance companies, or whatever. And that's the reason why this gap always remained. And at MHFC, our co-founders always thought that, this is a segment we need to address. And with my experience in HDFC, having spent a lot of time on credit appraisals and various appraisals, I firmly believe that these are customers who are credit worthy. It's only that we need to understand the the incomes. We need to understand their story.
Oh, Rajesh na cerebrus.
One of the first beliefs, founding
Sammelan
beliefs
करके
that
किया है.
we set our company was, I quote Professor Mohammad Yunus on this quote, and that's, I think, was the foundation on which this whole company was built, was when he said, it's not customers who are not credit worthy. It is banks who are not people worthy. And we built this whole organization trying to be people worthy while assessing the risk of the loans that we undergo.
Yes, amazing. So, there must be still lakhs of Anil Kumbarkars who do not find a micro housing finance corporation or another organization, even though I would say that there has been a relative trend in the last few years and we have seen them in hoardings also in between of various organizations who say that yes, there are people whom we lend to even if they don't have bank accounts, IT statements and all of that. Now it is on the wane. But how many really pay attention to that with the feeling for it? कि जो purpose है, जो धर्म है, उसके लिए भाव है. In Acharya Chanakya's Kautilya Artha Shastra, there is a phrase which several of you will identify. Those who don't know it, we call it the PSSR principle, which simply translates to Praja ke sukh mein Raja ka sukh hai. Now, Praja over here is the customer, and Raja is the Swami or the leader who starts an organization, starts an enterprise with the customer's benefit in mind. And not only starts, sticks with it all along. All right. So my question to you is, Jayesh, what were some of the challenges you faced along the way, right? Because I think creation is relatively easy or burning with passion to begin an enterprise that serves that particular customer you have in mind. But I'm sure it wasn't an easy journey. I want you to focus, if possible, as how different would it have been where HDFC, many things were settled or set, taken care of, processes in place, so many things in place. What did it take of you, especially as a leader, as a Swami? Did it test your leadership?
Yeah. Before I get into that, Rajesh, I mean, you say whether it is this segment that we were trying to serve the poor ones, which adds to the sort of an aura of what the kind of work we were doing. But I think even for the normal segment, the normal formal segment, or any work that we do, I think that intention and the clarity has to be there. That purpose has to be very clear in terms of who are serving. I mean, whether they're investors or whether who are whatever. And I'll come to that, maybe at the later end of the discussion that we have. But you're right. I mean, at HDFC, I was sort of the king. I mean, we were handling a region. I mean, everybody in that region, we had sanctioning powers. We could do whatever. And HDFC is such a decentralized organization that we virtually were sort of the kings of that region. I mean, we didn't have to go to head office for permission for small little things. And, the perks were there, the salaries were there, the ESOPs were there. So everything was like sort of absolutely settled. And when we came to MHFC, there was nothing. I mean, HDFC gave a card and all the doors would open up, whether it was a door to a bureaucrat's office or anywhere. You didn't require an introduction. You didn't require who you were. It was just that card that mattered. But with MHFC, I mean, people would say, who are you? What is MHFC? In fact, including when we went for our first loan from a bank, we got turned down by almost 5 or 6 banks, and they said, look, you're doing, maybe you're doing a good job, but I don't think this is going to be sustainable. The kind of customers you're trying to lend are going to be very difficult. It's going to be a big challenge. So finally we went to HDFC, and HDFC said, okay, I mean, though we don't fully, believe in what you're saying and believe in what you're trying to do, but maybe since you're there and you've done credit and we probably know your credit skills and all that, we'll give you a 5 crore loan. As if that was more of a sort of a, they couldn't say no, probably. I don't know, need to check with them, go back and check with them. But we used that 5 crore loan and went to other banks. Look, HDFC gave us 5 crore. Will you give us more? He said, okay, if HDFC is giving you, we'll give you 1 crore. We'll give you 2 crores. That's how we sort of started. That was a big challenge. I mean, to explain that story or explain that conviction that we had that these customers are probably as good as the formal, it's only that we need to find a way to appraise them and find a way to understand that risk was not understood by them. It was something that we were convinced about, but passing on that conviction to our stakeholders was not there. The second most important challenge was, like you said, the market was immense. I mean, you ask anybody, even today, you said how many people who need a house, and that the list, even within this group, I'm sure, if we were just pass around that how many people need the house, we'll probably generate about 100 leads. But the problem and the challenge is that these people who need a house don't even know that there's an opportunity for them to take a loan or, actually make their own houses. So to communicate, to reach out to them was a challenge. I mean, how do we do that? If you put ads in papers, people would just see through them. If you go and tell them something, people will not believe it. Like, we saw Anil Karmakar said, he said, मेरे को विश्वास नहीं होता था कि कोई हमें लोन देगा. So that was the challenge. How do we convince people that yes, we are there, we'll probably help you. Why don't you try? Let's try. We probably might give you a loan.
Yes, wonderful. So that really explains. And I also remember Jayesh from some of our conversations that how dramatic is the change where everything, like you said, you are the king of your little empire, and you also had a fixed place for parking for your car. If you could just share a little
on
bit
a busy
that.
street where nobody else was parked, would found parking, and I would walk in anytime and straight there and park my car.
And now suddenly all of that has gone up in smoke, and you have to go literally, kind of requesting once again people to recognize you. अरे मैं वो ही हूँ, पहले मैं HDFC में था, now I am here. But it doesn't matter. Okay, wonderful. So that's the primary test of a Swami, a leader.
Sorry, one more thing. The other one more challenge was on the supply side. There were no builder constructing for these people because there were no people who could buy houses. There was lack of supply. I mean, so even if we found people and gave sanctioned loans to them, we didn't find houses that they could go and buy. So we had to work with builders and tell them, please construct for these people. We are, he said, नहीं ये लोग कौन कैसे खरीदेंगे? He said, हम लोग loan देंगे. So we had to convince the builders to sort of start constructing.
Right, superb. Yes, so I was just, for the benefit of our participants, I was just sharing that the leader gets tested on 6 particular attributes, okay, which Acharya Chanakya calls as Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mana, Mada, Harsha. Okay, in CG, we call it as lakpaf, lust, anger, greed, pride, arrogance, and foolhardiness. And now what happens is that as you become more and more successful in your career, automatically any human begins to feel a little growth in one's pride. So there's a growth in your career, there's a growth in your success rate, and there's a growth in your pride. And as Jayesh said, the reason why we said this is because, when you set up an organization with a noble purpose, your dharma, praja ke sukh mein jo raja ka sukh hai, it's one thing to say that, but you are severely challenged on these 6 things. Okay. That said, now I'm going to move to the second component. Okay. So for those absolutely not familiar with Bharatiya Shastra or Kautilya Artha Shastra, worry not. We are using this Sammelan as an opportunity to also educate you on some of these concepts. So after Swami, the feminine of that is called Swamini, that is the leader, comes the deputies. The deputies are called Amatyas. In commonplace terms, we may call it Mantri, right? But Acharya Chanakya alludes to this as Amatya. Amatyas, they are not only execution specialists, but they are confidants. So that automatically means that these confidants have to be aligned. Now, my question is, if Jayeshji could not find, takers for, at the bank levels for people to believe in his purpose, and then even on the supply side for builders who would say, we can actually build for these people, how easy or difficult it was to find deputies, Jayeshji? How did you build your team? I mean, that must have been quite a struggle.
Well, while we were at it, it didn't seem like it. But looking back at it, when people talk about, oh, you did this, so that's when you realize, how differently we did it. I think one thing we decided, because I was from the industry, I said we're not going to take anyone from the industry, because I didn't want people with sort of a baggage coming in. I know this, this is how it is done, this is how it is done. Because we're trying to address a problem which was very, very different and not addressed so far in the industry. So nobody from the finance industry. And we took people who were passionate about what we were trying to do, who believed in what we were trying to do, and were willing to risk that in case we fail, it's fine with them. So it was a big call, and we made it right up front. And we were not the best paymasters. We were one of the worst in the industry. In fact, we have a couple of our initial colleagues who are on this Sammelan as well. And they would share. I mean, they probably had offers far better than what they got paid at MHFC. But two things we said: we're going to share our profits with everyone. So including the colleague who served us tea had an ESOP as much as chairman and the rest of the management team. So everybody was given ESOPs. The other thing was that we went to social service stuff. We said, the finance part on this in this entire housing finance transaction is a very small part. I think it's more about understanding the customer, understanding the family dynamics, understanding the risk in terms of how are they going to pay, whether they have the intentions to pay back or not. And therefore, we recruited most of our initial people on the field from social work colleges. I mean, masters in social work, bachelors in social work, and a lot of other, the recruitments came from references. Some of my colleagues at HDFC said, oh, my son's just graduated, why don't you see if he can do some training or some internship with you? And that internship then eventually turned into, regular employments. There were people whose friends, whose children wanted to go abroad, and they wanted some good experience in their CV working for a social organization. So they said, we want to volunteer for about a year. And the advantage, we never bothered about them going and leaving us after a year. But what they contributed in that 1 year, or the little time that they spent with us or whatever, was immensely, immensely useful. And I think one of the reasons why we succeeded in those critical initial years was because of the new ideas, the innovation, the kind of new enthusiasm and out-of-box thinking that these young people got into.
That's amazing. And, I can vouch for that, friends, because we did some work together with Jayesh at the helm. And I met a lot of the Amatyas, the deputies, some of which whom we will try and bring in towards the end of today's session. And I could say the one thing that actually connected them all was the same dharma, the purpose, the passion. So Jayesh, I have one more question to the point you made. It is one thing to say, hey, we took freshers so that we could inculcate in them. But, how is it that people were so inspired with being able to provide loans, housing loans, to those who cannot afford, otherwise in the normal financial system?
Right.
How could you inspire? I mean, I'm sure there were, even at that point of time, many more glamorous opportunities available. How did you inculcate this? Because I think leaders can really learn from this. How does a Swami bring that dharma into the rest of that organization?
So one of my pitches that, when I used to go to colleges for recruitment, we used to be, see, you could work for any organization. You could probably be making a mixer, or you could probably making a scooter, or probably making something. And at the end of the day, you'll go back home happy saying that, look, I sold so many, I sold so many, I sold so many. I said, here, even if you help two people, two families own a house, they'll probably remember you for a life. You're changing the whole lifestyle. You're changing the whole life of those people. And that is what you are doing. I mean, if you're not there, that person would probably not have an opportunity to do that. And that's the role that you have to take up. And it brings in with a lot of responsibility, because when you develop and people trust you, it becomes that much more responsible for do that. And I think we had we were fortunate and very lucky that we had a tremendous team, and the attrition was almost zero. I mean, people only left, as I said, because they wanted to go abroad and educate. People who left came back. So, it was just, quite amazing.
So I want to say at this point in time, friends, that one is, to hear whatever Jayesh said in terms of his so-called pitch, to tell them that you could be selling this and that, but here you have opportunity to change lives. I can't overemphasize this point which he made, because we work with a whole host of organizations. I personally work with a whole host of leaders. And the primary thing that they actually have a problem with is being able to bring ownership in people. Not realizing is to bring ownership in your amatyas, you need a noble purpose. And by noble, I don't mean doing things for free. So the organization that Jayesh built and, still leads in many ways is not, giving things for free or for dirt cheap or whatever. There is a certain economic angle to it. Quite obviously, it's a for-profit organization. But to be able to think, what the higher purpose is, and being able to instill that with all the people right from the time they are hired is something else. And which brings me to my next element. So in the Artha Shastra, the Swami, the leader, the Amatya, the deputies, they come together to serve the Janpad, which is the other term for Praja or the customers. So, Jayesh, how did you go about now finding these people? Yeah, again, it may be easy to say, hey, there are lakhs of them, thousands of them who are there. But how do you build, a systematic way of reaching out to these? And how do you build a mechanism where, again, उसमें से आप छान के आप डिसाइड करें कि किसको लोन देना है, किसको नहीं देना है. If you could quote one or two anecdotes also where, like Anil Kumbarkar, how did you kind of build this entire process? It would be very nice.
So it wasn't very easy, and we made a lot of mistakes, but we kept trying. Like I remember in the initial days, we said, we used to print leaflets, thousands of lakhs of them, and people would stand on the, Bombay railway railway stations, and anyone who comes out of the local train would distribute them. Makhanji, people would travel in the train, giving them and sitting and talking to them while they're traveling from, say, Virar to Churchgate or something. We tried, talking to builders, saying that आपके flats में जो मना कर रहे हो, जो इसको loan नहीं मिल रहा, उनको हमारे पास भेजो. People, who have gone to all the banks and they've been refused loan, please send them to me. We will see what are the kind of customers that banks reject, and we'll see if we can do that. Because when we started, we knew one thing, that we need to, find, and a loan is a very simple product. I mean, you find a demand, identify a customer and give the loan. I mean, there's no rocket science to it really. So we said, if we know a customer and, who's been rejected by another bank, and he comes to us, let's analyze it. Let's understand what is the reason why the banks, have rejected him, and then keep it aside and then understand the risk ourselves. What we sort of also, did was we started working with a lot of social organizations, community organizations, NGOs, like, for example, Habitat for Humanities. We worked with Mathadi Kamgar unions. We worked with taxi unions, like you saw that notice board in the video where we went and put posters there. We are and there was no marketing team or or a finance team or something. Everybody was trying to get customers and identify people. So a lot of friends, they said, "Arey, mera driver ko loan chahiye, mere maid ko loan chahiye." So that's how we got our first few customers, and then the word spread. And then, of course, on the supply side, as we connected with more builders, asking them to build for them, we got leads through builders, and that's how we were one of the slowest growing housing finance company for the first 10 years.
Wow. And then still to be happy with that, how challenging that would have been, right?
It was. I mean, so we were very clear, we've done this year, and next year, depending on the kind of money we would raise, we probably, there were no budgets. I mean, we couldn't say, okay, next year we want to go up 50%, we want to go to this. It would all depend on how much money we could raise. And I must say that here that, all our bankers are, refinancers, the National Housing Bank and they were extremely, extremely supportive. Some of them break their rules and their normal convention norms to be, supporting us. Like NHB wouldn't lend for, companies before a 3-year track record. They lent us in the first year because I think probably they got a little overawed by the passion and, and I'm one, I mean, some of my other colleagues were even more passionate and more, in a better convincing skills to convince them.
I can see the passion growing on their face as we are going through this. And we'll bring them in a while. Jayesh ji, that brings me to my next question. Okay. Now, once again, in the Chanakyan scheme of things, there's 7 elements, my dear friends, for any organization. So there's Swami, the leader, I'm repeating, Amatya, which is the deputy, then the Janpad, the customer. So the Swami and the Amatya, the leader and the deputies, work together towards the purpose to do seva for the customer. All right. Now, however, to be able to do that seva, we still need certain things. And one of the first things that is required is the infrastructure, which is called Durga. So I'm very curious to know, Jayesh ji, what is the Durga that you all built for being able to provide Durga for your Janpad?
Right. So before I get to that, I'll define the Janpad a little more before we get into that, because it will fall in context. So our typical customer was the one who was in an informal segment. He did not have salaries. He did not have a salary slip. He did not have tax returns. He did not have maybe a bank account, but he was working. He had a regular cash flow. Like, for example, a maid servant. I mean, we all pay her in cash most of the time. They have regular jobs, probably more secure than our jobs. They get their salaries get paid on time. But if they were to walk into a bank, they would not get in. So typically our customer profiles were chaiwalas, bajiwalas, rickshawalas, maid servants, drivers, plumbers, carpenters, people working in shops as salesmen, various people mostly in the informal sector. Now, having defined this as a customer segment, we said that, how do we approach them? Like, Rajesh asked me, how do we approach them? So the first thing we decided, if we have offices, expecting a chaiwala or a taxiwala to walk into an office and tell me, look, I want a housing loan, would never happen. So we said we don't need offices. For the first 12 years, we did not have any office other than the small office that we had in Bombay, a small part of it that you saw on the video. That was the only office we had. And we had our entire team. We were at that time working in about 7 states, and our entire team would be working on the field, meeting customers at their houses, at their employment locations, and assessing loans.
Wow.
So there are no offices. I mean, it worked both ways. Number one, it worked in saving cost, because that was very critical. We'll come to that later. That was very critical. Second, it helped us analyze and understand the risk better. If we were to understand the risk of a loan to a chaiwala sitting in the office across the table, we would have never understood that. But when we were standing at his tea stall, talking to him, chatting with him, chatting with his family at his residence, we knew exactly what the dynamics was. We knew exactly what was the kind of, money that he made. And the other difference we made from the normal banking or housing finance system was we stopped deriving income. We said, let's estimate income. But for a chaiwala, we could not derive that, he earns 4,340 rupees a month. It's not possible, right? We said that he approximately earns about 5 to 7,000 rupees. And is that enough? Good enough? Say, for example, if installment was 3,000, if he's earning 12,000, is that income enough to pay an installment of 3,000? As long as there was an accurate estimate, a fairly accurate estimate, we were good enough. So that was the second thing. And that's what, saved us a lot of cost and, training and hiring,
Amazing.
expensive.
So you are among the first ones at that point in time to literally work from home.
That's right. I mean, this was in 2009 that when we started this, we did that.
Yeah. And my smile, my dear friends, I don't know whether you got it. Jayeshji said something very amazing, but in passing. He said that the maids' jobs are probably more secure than ours, right? Because even the likes of the mightiest are today laying off people without any thought, even those who have served them for a long time. So in some sense, these people are more secure than probably what we are. I think it's such a beautiful point. And several of them are there. I mean, Anil Kumbarkars of the world, they are there. They are in the lanes of Mumbai every single day. And the grind is very real for them. Right? So amazing, Jayeshji. So the Durga or the infrastructure, barring that small little place that was there for office, which served as head office, everybody else worked on the field, right? And it must have been amazing. I mean, what an experience would have been to work on the field and with the customers. So I'm going to bring in
one
Mukesh.
anecdote here.
Yes.
It's been 16 years now that I've been with MHFC since we started it. I still don't have a place and a chair to sit on. So every time I go to office, I first find, I need to be early because otherwise I don't get a place to sit. And otherwise they push me off to some corner, some room next to the toilet or something where I need to sit or some small place there.
Wonderful. That must be making you feel like one of your customers.
Yeah, no, and it makes me feel I have to be at office before everybody else reaches there.
Yes, yes. I was going to bring in Mukesh Jayeshji with your permission, right?
Yes.
So,
Namaste, Mukeshji.
Namaste, Mukesh. Dr. Mukesh Singh now. So, congrats on your that additional prefix. Mukesh, थोड़ा सा बताइए कि आपका experience as one of the amatyas, one of the team members of Jayesh ji, कैसा रहा? पहले का समय का थोड़ा सा बताइए. It would be lovely to know. मुकेश, आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा है. I don't know why. You are unmuted, but I'm not able. At least I'm not able to hear you. Amita, are you? No. Mukesh, try again.
Mukesh, we cannot hear you. Can you just speak up? Say something. नहीं
Pod use कर रहे तो निकाल दीजिए. And maybe I can come back to you in a while. Okay, एक बार check कर लीजिए. Yeah, check it independently. I'll come back to you. Not a problem. Okay, I will also now come to Avni. Avni, if you could briefly introduce yourself and what aligned you to Jayeshji's purpose and what is it that still keeps you going? थोड़ा सा बताइए.
So before Avni starts, there's a very interesting thing about Avni. Avni was the one who was responsible for our increase in salaries. Because when we started, our salary was so little and, the salary was capped. So even everybody, including the directors, promoters, would get only that much. And young people like Avni and all of them, we said, look, this is not enough for me. If you don't pay me, we'll leave. So because we had to increase Avni's salaries, our salaries also got, increased by.
Wow, that's amazing. We need Avnis in all organizations. Yes, Avni, thoda sa, if you could share with your early experience and what was it to work with a leader with a purpose of an organization like this?
Namaste, sir. Namaste, Jayesh.
Namaste.
Am I audible?
Yes, very well.
Yes, ma'am.
So, like what Jayesh said, but then it was like praiseworthy in the sense that he said it very kind of shortly, that he didn't get, like, I was responsible for raising salary, but he didn't even mention that, like, they didn't draw salaries up to, I think, 5-6 years for sure. None of them, 5 promoters, they didn't even take a single penny. And they ensured that all of us, like as he rightly mentioned, that the ESOPs were rolled out. So whatever company was getting like as a profit or anything, they were sharing it, and we've all felt like owners. So I would just go to a kind of life cycle of Svatantra. Like now Svatantra, earlier it was micro housing finance. So we started off with a purpose that we have to serve the unserved. That is like this kind of segment which was like neglected by most of the housing finance companies. So that was the first purpose which we found. And we were the first ones, like when we started in 2008, we were the first housing finance, and we like we call a HFC, that is affordable housing finance company. So there were HFCs, but none of them were segment like giving the segment of catering to the segment of affordable housing. So we were the AHFC and the first one. And later on, lot of all the peers and all the big ones also started following the same model. So like, yes, purpose, and then like trust the purpose, finding the people who are like your purpose and align with your purpose. That is the social economic investors which we had to cater to the kind of segment. And so we were having two like very good investors, MSDF and like the Dell Computers and IFIF, so India Inclusion Fund. So they were also having the same purpose of like us to serve the customers. And then like the normal startup does, we also learned the way we got like ahead, and then we also found a lot of mistakes. But then we were all, as Jayesh said, that we were the owners also, in the sense like we never felt that like we are the employees and there are bosses whom we report to. It's like, if you do mistakes, let's accept, let's sort it out together. Otherwise, you are the owners, you think that how you will take this mistake forward and how you will rectify this
Outstanding.
mistake.
Wow, so
and
beautiful.
and lastly, we have a beautiful culture. You will be amazed to know that we didn't have a formal HR for I think 4 or 5 years. We never felt the need. Like we were not having that kind of professional HR or a
Right.
team of HR. We all were like, okay, like we were knowing each and every employee up to the size of 150 employees. We were knowing each and every employee by name, even the loan officer or a office boy, everybody we knew.
Right.
And secondly, like we also proved the model, like saying that we didn't have the NPAs up to I think 2014, if I remember right. To 14 or 15, we had 0 NPAs. So
Wow.
the customers were, as Rajesh rightly said, that they were credit worthy, and we made it sure that we are also people worthy. Yeah.
Superb, fantastic. Such wonderful points, Avni, and it really came from you with passion. Mukesh, have you checked your voice? Abhi aa rahi hai
Yes,
awaaz?
yes,
Okay,
sir.
wonderful. So, Avni told us a lot about what happened inside. Mukesh, I want to know a little bit of what happened outside. Okay, field ke बारे में थोड़ा सा बताइए. It would be lovely to know.
Yes, sir. नमस्ते सर, नमस्ते जय सर, नमस्ते वनी मैम, नमस्ते टू ऑल। सर मैंने 2015 में कंपनी जब ज्वाइन किया था तो मैंने जो है ट्रेनिंग जो लिया था वो जयेश सर से ही लिया था सबसे पहले। सो सर, इंटरनल हो या एक्सटर्नल हो सर, जो भी हमने सीखा इस कंपनी में लास्ट 10 ईयर में, सारा चीजें जयेश सर के साथ एंड पूरी कंपनी के साथ ही सीखा है। हम जो कंपनी में काम करते हैं वो हम कंपनी के लिए काम नहीं करते हैं, एक्चुअली हम कंपनी के साथ काम करते हैं। और हम सिर्फ लोन देने का काम नहीं करते हैं, हम फील्ड में लोगों की प्रॉब्लम समझते हैं, सुनते हैं और उसके जो बेसिक नीड है एक हाउस जिसको फुलफिल करने के लिए हम लोग सपोर्ट करते हैं, ताकि उनका एक सोशल डेवलपमेंट भी हो, उनकी एक घर भी बसे और लोगों की एक जो छत की जो सपना होती है ना वो पूरी हो। तो हमारा कभी ये ऑब्जेक्टिव नहीं रहा है कि हम लोन बांटने के लिए काम करते हैं। हमने हमेशा से यही काम किया है कि लोगों की जरूरतें को जो पूरा करने के लिए हम काम करते हैं। वो मीनिंग्स अलग निकाल सकते हैं सर, लेकिन मीनिंग्स तो कई अलग-अलग चीजें निकल सकती है। तो हमने जो भी कंपनी में काम किया फील्ड को लेकर के, डे 1 से हमें कभी सर ने ये नहीं कहा कि ये काम करो, आज आप ये काम क्यों नहीं किए? हमने कभी सर को मौका ही नहीं दिया कि सर हमें जो है काम के लिए कभी बोले। तो सर को देख करके, सर के मार्गदर्शन में हमने पूरा जो है उसके एक्सपीरियंस के हिसाब से हमने पूरे फील्ड का काम खुद से किया है। और आज जो भी टीम काम करती है वो पूरा मोटिवेट होकर काम करती है, किसी को कभी कोई काम बोलने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती है। सो फील्ड में सर बहुत अच्छे सर्विस प्रोवाइड करते हैं। और सर्विस कोई लोन के लिए नहीं होता है सर, ये हाउस कंप्लीट करने के लिए, घर के जो सपना है उसको पूरा करने के लिए हम काम करते हैं। तो शुरू से अवनी मैम, जयेश सर के साथ हम लोग रहे हैं सर, तो कभी भी ये फीलिंग नहीं आई है कि वो हमारे बॉस हैं। हमने यही देखा है कि वो हमारे मार्गदर्शक है और उसके अकॉर्डिंग ही हमने काम किया है।
Outstanding.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so
sir.
much, Mukesh. I mean, and I can tell you folks, because again, I've known, Mukesh, Avni, several of these for a while now. And what you hear here is exactly what they feel, and very authentically. And Mukesh especially does a lot of work for and feels for society even otherwise. So the kind of team that one builds, my dear friends, is so critical. It's so hard to get it today, right? And Avni, thanks for sharing about the fifth element, which is kosh. Okay, kosh is about treasury, the money, the funds that the organization needs. Now, I'm going to just briefly mention the next two. We don't have enough opportunity to go into those two, but because I'm going to come to something else. The next two elements, for friends who want to note it down, I spoke about Swami, Amatya, Janpad, Durga, the infrastructure, Kosha, the funds, Danda is the rest of the team, the Sena, the feet on street. All right. And after that comes the Mitra, again, which Avni spoke about briefly, because the organizations who partner with you, Mitra means your allies. Those who partner with you have to understand and share in your purpose. If they don't become your Mitra. So Acharya Chanakya's philosophy is that जो आपका धर्म है वो आपके मित्रों को समझना है. So Mitra, my dear friends, is not friend. Mitra is an ally, and it's so powerful to have allies like all of us here. So I'm going to come to now innovations that Jayesh ji may have had to do along the way. Jayesh ji, one of the things, if you could also share in that, is the concept that now, thanks to our Operation Sindoor and all of that, has become very popular, which is the ambassador, the bureaucrat, and in Kautilian terms, it is called Doot. All right, so thoda sa, you can of course share about the rest also. If you could also share a little bit about Doot and how Svatantra used that concept.
Yeah. So yeah, so on the innovation, like I said, we knew the characteristics, we knew our customers very well. For example, in 2009, if you had to apply for a loan, you had a 3-page application form that one needs to fill up. And we started with that. And then we realized that the information that we're getting on the application form was quite different when we actually go and, validate that in the field. So we said, and understood reasons for that. And we said, we don't need an application form, because the application form is actually not serving the purpose. In fact, it's actually creating more risks, rather than, reducing risk, because it's someone else filling up the application form. The information there is not relevant and cannot be relied on while underwriting a loan. So we said no application form. And we were the first ones to introduce audios and videos to be able to appraise loans. So our people on the field had conversations with the customer. These were recorded. He recommended, and at the end of the conversation, the person on the field who is the the junior most person in the organization, but he's the one who's meeting the customer. He's the one who's actually interacting with the customer, and we actually gave it to him, saying that since you are the one who's got the first hand experience with the customer, you would probably understand the risk of the customer better than any one of us sitting at the head office. And therefore his feedback in terms of the audios and the videos was very critical in the underwriting. Then of course, the underwriting team in the head office used analytics and data and all that to sort of validate that. But the primary information on which the loan was underwritten was this. And what we developed was a storyboard of the customer, which basically, each one of us, if you think about it, has a story. Building or buying a house doesn't come with what we decided yesterday, or when I had a dream today, and next day you get up and walk into a housing finance office or a builder's office to book a house. It's a long journey. People have probably aspired to build a house over 5 years, over 10 years, over 3 years, and during that journey there's a lot of that's transpired. And if you understand that, you probably be able to understand that risk better. So we try to capture all that, what the customers and their families have thought through on a storyboard, which becomes our basic tool for appraising loans. So that was the innovation, the tool for appraising underwritten loans. As we grew, we had to decentralize, because then it was difficult for people from one sitting in one office, one place, to sort of coordinate that. So we decentralized. We then started open 4 offices in 4 different parts apart from the head office. And when we decentralized, training, everything had to be decent. We were recruiting more people. We were growing in business, and to make sure that the values and the culture and the kind of processes and the reason for each process and each policy was properly understood by the last person on, the farthest of place that we were serving the customer. We said it's not going to be possible for 4 or 5 of us to do that. And therefore, we developed a team of doots. Doots were basically our representatives, or representatives of not the management or something. It's the representative of the organization.
Values.
That's what they spoke about, the culture. They spoke about the, the ethos of the organization, what we are supposed to do, the purpose, and also train the people on the field to do that. In fact, Mukesh and Avni are, part of the Doot team that we have, and they are the ones who are then responsible for disseminating this entire information to the last person that we have.
Superb. So let's bring Avni again for a minute. Avni, can you just share a little bit about your Doot experience? Also, you could share a little bit about the function that you represent for people's benefit.
So, firstly, the function, I started off as the compliance head of a company, and as I got along, I was given the opportunity to do the banking, in the sense the treasury function. So raising funds, doing the bank licensing, that I was doing for a while. Then I was put into the internal audit department. That time we didn't have a kind of full-fledged internal audit team. So what we had is like a small team to just take care of the audits and risks and all. Then I was I was also assisting the director project, like one of the co-founder, Mr. Ramesh Ogle. So he was a construction veteran. So I was helping him, in the sense I was also a deputy of him for all the real estate financing. So builder financing. So I was part of the projects team, which we called as. And as we had a kind of takeover also of the company to Aditya Birla Group of companies, I decided to step down as a CS, and I got into a full-fledged legal role. So right now I am representing the legal wing of the Svatantra. And coming back to the Doot experience, it was something which we had never faced, in the sense we also we underwent a lot of trainings, but this was something, a different training, having a lot of value inculcation through the stories, a lot of brainstorming, plus defining or understanding all the, going back to the roots of Artha, Shastra, Chanakya, all those things which are we can relate, like our customer, that in day-to-day life we will find a vegetable vendor, a maid, we will have all those people around us. So this concepts made things so clear that we could also inculcate or transfer that to our new joinees or the new people on the field or the decentralized branches, that what is the company's purpose, what are the values. And as we progressed, apart from Doot, we also had a program of Swamulya, so which we called at which were representing our values of the company. So that was also one of the program we were part of.
Superb.
So yes.
So folks, you can see one of the exciting things about Svatantra is that Indian DNA and being able to cultivate your entire culture and all that you do, several aspects using Indian wisdom. Okay, now this is very, very critical to know. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to bring Jayesh ji to the last concept today, and then we come to you, audience. अभी आचार्य चाणक्य बोलते हैं, in an organization, a leader needs to mindfully move through 4 phases. Okay, they are creation, consolidation, expansion, and renewal. Now we heard about creation in some amount of detail. Consolidation, we heard about processes and how Jayesh ji actually, with the help of the team, was able to strengthen the organization so much so, as Avni mentioned, in 2014, no NPAs. I mean, which financial services organization has a zero NPA? And then the expansion to a certain extent where he spoke about multiple states. So now my question to you, Jayesh ji, is if you could speak a little bit about the last part, which is renewal. So my question to you is, having come this far, what next and what have you done in this domain of renewal of the organization?
Right. Yeah, I think this probably you kept the last most difficult question for the last, I guess. Yeah, but the most challenging one really, because you see, I think we were a finance company. While the purpose and all that was fine for an external person or for anybody joining in when your company is growing, all that will come in only after is come into the organization. From the outside, he said, why should I join this organization? Why should I lend to this organization? Why should I invest in this organization? So I think from day one, we were very clear that we have to be financially sustainable. We were profit making from day one, right? Now there's a whole what do you say, bandwidth of profit making. I mean, you can decide on which part of the this thing you want to be. We could have charged 18% and people would have happily paid, and they would have still patted our back saying that you didn't, you're giving loans to people where nobody gave loans to. But that was not the philosophy. I mean, we started it saying that if we truly believe that these customers are as credit worthy as the normal formal customers are, we can't be charging them 5, 6, 7% more than what we pay. Of course, our cost of borrowing was far more than what the normal housing finance companies were. If a normal housing finance company in those days were probably, I'm just giving examples, I mean, not necessarily that interest rate numbers are. So suppose they are borrowing at 7% and we are borrowing at 10%. There's definitely going to be a 3% difference in our lending rates compared to theirs because their cost of funds are cheap. So that was something which was a variable that was not in our hands. We made sure that the rest of the variables, the credit cost, that is the kind of quality of loans that we do, the kind of repayments, the delinquencies that we have to keep that as the minimum because otherwise that's going to add to our cost. Second is our operational cost. We said we need to keep that at a minimum. So we developed a financial model which was sustainable. It wasn't under pressure saying that, oh, if this breaks, then probably the future of the company is at stake because there'll be no investors, there'll be no lenders, and then at a particular thing you would probably break. So we made sure that we were progressive on that. As our growth grew, we knew. I mean, in where I said that supply was a big challenge, there used to be inconsistencies in business numbers every month. There would be some new project that was launched and there would be a lot of applications. The next 4 months, there were no project launches and the business would go down. Now, beyond a certain point, beyond a certain volume or beyond a certain scale, that was not sustainable. So we had to introduce new products. We had to introduce giving loans to people constructing their own houses, people, constructing or renovating houses. And this required additional challenges, additional processes. So we put that in place, right? Then we needed more funds. We needed more equity. Our investors who were invested with us for 10 years, it was time for them to exit. That when builders came in and they bought out the company and, bought us out, including our ESOPs and the investors and everything, they bought us out. Now is the time when we are expanding to the next phase where, we go public in a few years and that will require more investments coming in. The investors who come in will also have their, objectives. Of course, they love what we do.
Right.
We continue what we do, but there'll be more additions to the scope of what we are doing. Priorities might change. We might probably be a little more sensitive to the ROAs and ROEs than what we were. But that's part of the growing,
Yes.
growing up
That's
and
part of the renewal.
scaling up. As long as the main ethos and the main purpose of the customer and the company remains the same. And we now have a new team which will probably take it on from there as I probably slowly take a backseat.
So, what a beautiful time we've have been able to bring in this Sammelan when Jayesh ji is actually on the path now to hand over to the new team. But, once someone, a Swami, has a purpose, that purpose continues for life. So I'm sure there's a lot more in store, and the purpose will continue in some way or the other even after JSG has exit this formal organization. Okay, but that we'll find out in the future. So now I'm going to open it up to the audience. Folks, you've been wonderful. May I request as many people as possible to please come on camera? It will be wonderful. And I'm going to request Aniket, if you could click a picture, it would be nice. But I want to cover some of the questions now. So I think one or two have been responded to by Avni, if I noticed right. Nehal asked a very loaded question. She wants to know, Jayesh ji, if you've used the Panchang. Okay, now folks, for those who are completely not aware of Artha Shastra or Bharatiya Shastra, in Acharya's concepts in the Kautilya Artha Shastra, there is a tool for planning, execution, monitoring, review, and constant improvement. Okay, that's called the Panchang. So I don't expect that Jayesh ji will share great details of this. We don't have the time for that.
But I just have one thing to say to Nehal on this. Unfortunately, when we started it, I was not aware of the Panchang, and we probably learned the things accordingly. And now when I look back of what we did and comparing with the Panchang, I think there are a lot of gaps, what we could have done better, maybe we would have learned better. But the next thing that I'm planning to do now, I'm definitely going to use the Panchang and maybe probably be able to do that more effectively.
Superb. Wonderful. So good to hear. Nehal, I hope you got your answer. But can you get tips
Any
from
core
Jayesh ji?
things?
Yeah.
Any core things that you really had in mind while you were doing this? Any core points, like something that is very unique to what you were doing? Of course, you covered it while you were talking, but still, like something.
So core thing was to firstly get, there was a very strong bias that lending to this segment of customers was very risky and nobody wanted to venture into that. I think that's the myth that we broke. Today we have, I think probably if a taxiwala wants a loan today, he has more than 10 options to go to and get that loan. I think that's the change that we probably have been able to get.
Right, super. Okay, so Jayesh ji, I'm going to take Asim's question, and folks, if I missed any question earlier, Amita, you may please remind me. Asim asks, how did Jayesh ji keep DNA and values intact in you, in your Amatyas and rest of the team over so many years? Can you give us an example or two of your leadership style in challenging times?
Well, I'll just say what I am. I just be myself. And if there's a problem, I tell my people there's a problem. If I'm worried about something, I tell them this is what I'm worried about. And I really trust, that probably, and there have been so many instances where I've got solutions to my problems from probably people 15 years junior to me, or who probably have no experience. But I think that's been the style, and I would feel very upset if someone's not contributing to the discussion, or probably just keeping quiet and say, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. We probably will know.
Yes, thank you. Prasad ji, I think your question was covered when Nehal asked. In case it is not, I will bring it up again. I'm going to take this question from Meenakshi, who I noticed again another CG alumnus, and has been part of this session right from the start. How do you see corporate or big business houses help you in your impactful business model, which is serving the unserved? I think the Birlas themselves are an example, Jayesh. Do you want to respond to this?
So yeah, I think what any investor, whether it's corporate or a private equity, would look at is that purpose only for the top end, and actual practices and processes don't follow that, then it doesn't sort of sell. But if there's an alignment in the what your business plan is, what your processes are, what your products are, and all of them are aligned to probably deliver it, then that is the it's not one part of the business plan, it's the whole business plan which they are investing in. So they are also equally committed to it.
Right. So Jayesh, I'll repeat Prasadji's question in case we still haven't responded to him adequately. What are the critical aspects, at least a couple of them, which you considered important for you to be successful with this enterprise? I presume he's going beyond purpose. And sub question is, have they changed over time?
So I think what led to the success is, I think, a wonderful alignment of all the 5 people who started off. And because we were so aligned, and because we knew each other's strengths very well, we knew the problem very well. I think the problem was extremely well defined. Never ever was there a confusion in terms of, should we make a little more profit? There's an opportunity here. Should we just do this? Can we just divert a little bit on this? Can we, when we had a little extra, but can we use it and, get a little more money on the treasury? Was never there, and it was amazing. I mean, it sounds unreal today, but whether, I don't know whether it's a positive or a negative. We, in the 10 years, never ever had a formal business strategy meeting.
Wow.
It was all there. If there was anything that came up for discussion, it was discussed there and there, right in front of everybody else. Rest of the staff would be there, discussed threadbare and decided what needs to be done. So I think it was that clarity of purpose. Secondly, I mean, not only clarity of the purpose of the dharma in terms of the customer we were trying to form, but also on the business model. We knew exactly what our costs are going to be. We knew exactly what are the kind of margins we are going to make. We knew exactly how we're going to price the project. In fact, for the first 10, 12 years, we did not even change our price. We did not even change our PLR once. Because we thought that these customers, though it was a floating rate loan and a variable rate loan, we thought that in case the price, people will not understand, is the price bada diya mera, kaise, kya hoga, people won't understand that. So we said, as long as we can work out the metrics, we'll probably, not need to do that. So I think these were things which were very clear on, which probably led to the success.
So last question to you, Jayesh, but I've also received a private message from Mir inviting you to Malacca Spice so that we can learn from you more upfront and your team as well. So maybe all of those who are here from Jayeshji's team, you're most welcome to join in soon. Yeah. The question now, last question. So Jayeshji, can you tell us, how did you deal with the few defaulters, considering that, still you have to keep the organization going? How are they dealt with?
So, I tell you, this is a question that I've handled a lot of times, because every regulator in their inspection used to ask, where is your collection policy or recovery policy? Our investors would ask us, where is your collection policy? And my initial days, my answer used to be, there's no collection policy. Because you cannot have a collection policy which is standard across. It has to be, each case is different and each case has to be dealt differently. While this is nice to talk about, and maybe we actually follow it in practice, but the general philosophy is that there are different categories. If there's an intentional defaulter, we need to, throw the book at him right up front and tell him that this is not acceptable, right? If there's an intentional default. There are defaults which are situational. And if it's a situational default, we need the commitment from the customer to be able to say, okay, if your installment is 9,000 rupees, I can't pay 9,000 because of the situation, but I can pay 500 rupees. So let's continue paying 500. That shows the commitment that he is sincere about his repayment. And when things improve, that will come back to normal. Third is, we were very, very fortunate that we did not have investors who were very, who told us, no, we cannot go beyond. We told them, I said, look, the normal industry in NPA numbers are around 1%. We are expecting that we should be under 3%, and that should be fine because of the customer. Fortunately, we've never touched that, 3% ever. I mean, recently there has been a little surge, but that also is quite temporary, and maybe also because of, realigning to the change strategies. But as long as we are confident about the underwriting, and we understand at the right outset, not only it's who does the underwriting. It's not only the sales team or the credit team or the anything. It's the entire organization. There are 4 people who meet the customer: the sales team, the credit team, operations team, and finally at the time of disbursement. So the 4 people who meet the customers before actually the loan is disbursed. And all of them are building a relationship. And this is a long-term relationship. It's a 15-year relationship. So unless you develop the trust and for the customer to trust you and you trusting the customer saying that in case of a problem, please call on us. We are there to help you. I think that solves the problem in most of the cases. Having said that, again, now with the investor pressures and all that, you have SARFAESI where you can possess the property, sell it and all that. Those also need to be done, but it has to be a balanced way. It cannot be a single policy because the policy document says 30 days, take possession, sell property. That cannot be done. While there's an important tool, it probably can be used as a threat, can be, used to throw the book at the customer. But I think at the end of the day, the solution is in the storyboard, is on the customers,
Yes.
He's the one who has a solution, whether you like it or not.
All right. So, folks, I would love to continue this conversation, but we want to keep within the promised time. So, I want to first of all applaud for the entire team that Jayesh ji created, but especially for the Swami who makes it happen. Okay, ये बहुत ही जरूरी है. So you heard about Swami, the purpose, the dharma. You heard about the Amatya, Janpad, Durga, Kosha. You heard a little bit about the Danda and Mitra. These are all the 7 elements that Kautilya has designed for creating a successful organization. You can learn more, of course, in time. Several of you have been part of the journey, but for now, I'm going to, express gratitude to Jayesh ji.
Thank you so much.
Now.
Thank you everyone for joining here and listening to me.
Handing it back to Aditi for closing.
Thank you so much, Jayesh ji and Rajesh ji. I think it was such an enriching hour, and I don't think any of us wanted this session to come to a close. But as as Rajesh ji said, this is another milestone in our learning journey. We have to continue, and it goes without saying. But if you have any more questions, if you would like to hear more from us at Chiranjeev Gurukul, we have the details. They'll be put in the chat immediately now. You can reach out to Aniket or Amita if you would like to reach any of our experts directly. I'm sure there's a lot to learn from them individually. And also, just to mention again that, as you know, Chiranjeev Gurukul is best known for our Prathmik and Madhyamik modules, and our next batches are starting in June and July. So if you would like to learn more about that, you can also reach out to Amita or Aniket. And with that, as always, we would like to close with our Shanti part. So I would invite you all to sit straight, take a deep breath, sit in your comfortable meditative posture, close your eyes. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Namaste again, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Dhanyawad.
Shubh Guruvar. Thank you so much,
Jayesh ji.
Jayesh ji and Rajesh ji.
Bye-bye.
Namaste. Bye-bye.